June 5th, soon to be June 6th, 2017 meeting to order, Planning Commission meeting to order. Ms. G, can you call the roll? Please.
Ms. Hockenberry?
Here.
Mr. Krasner?
Here.
Mr. Rankin?
Reluctantly here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Dietz? Here. Mr. Bodiska?
Here.
Mr. Jean is absent this evening.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Do
excellent.
we need to vote since it's after 10 o'clock?
That's a good question. It's after 11. We don't have to do anything special this evening since we're just starting. Yeah, I'd like this not to go after midnight, to be honest. We have just one item on the agenda, which is the 116 Great Falls Street. So I want to hear from the applicant how you think this evening goes, just because of the late hour. It's 11:20 at night, and this is quite a complicated submission, so I'm looking for your guidance a little bit here.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I'm Dave Lasso, representing the applicant. I think I would suggest this to you. There were a number of suggestions made the last time you were together, largely coming out of a concern about isolating for rezoning just the lot for the new house.
Correct.
We think we have added to the and revised our application to include all of the suggestions that you've made. We weren't able to do everything exactly the way, but at least each point was addressed. And with that, we'd like to have the staff that's analyzed it and is in support of the revised application to outline that for you, tell you why they support it. We've been in touch with the neighbors. We think the neighbors, at least the ones we've spoken to and heard from, are in support of the changes. And we'd ask you, as a matter of action, do not vote on the current rezoning, but rather give guidance to the council to give a first reading to the revised rezoning so that we can go get the revised rezoning request, new first reading. There is now an accompanying recommended change to the land use plan showing the entire frontage along Maple Avenue for higher density. Recommend that be shown differently now in the land use map. And then that would be done by the planning, by the city council, would be then returned to you for a vote of up or down on the rezoning, and then we could go back to the city council for the final approval if that's their choice. So I don't think you need to really spend a lot of time, but I do think you should hear from the staff. They've got the necessary information and their support of what we've done.
Okay, that seems reasonable. I mean, I just don't want to. I don't want to have us have to take some sort of action or vote this evening based on the hour and trying to process the information.
I don't think
so.
we're not asking you to do that. We really just want to hear that. We hope that we hear from you that you agree with the changes that we've made, that we've tried to take into account all of your suggestions, give us some support so we can then ask the council to take the action they need to take.
Okay, let's do that. So let's hear from the staff.
Thank you, Chair. So in front of you tonight is a staff report, as Mr. Lasso said. Just to correct one thing, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission take an action tonight. There is a motion that's before you in the staff report, and that motion lays out some foundations for getting to the now therefore I move clauses. And the two motions that are in there at the bottom there, one is to send this back to the City Council and recommend a new first reading on the amended application. And the second is to direct city staff to bring forward a land use map amendment. The reason these things are before you as a proposed motion tonight is what's being acted upon is the first reading. So as part of the first reading, council did refer it out to Planning Commission for recommendation. So instead of coming back with an up or down on the original recommendation, because so much work has gone into this, the recommendation from staff is that Planning Commission respond to council with a recommendation for a new first reading on the amended application. I see a
I'm not
lot
sh-
of eyes for.
Yeah, I'm not sure I
walk through
understand.
that.
Had more coffee than we've had this evening.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can summarize that.
sure.
It is staff's recommendation that we, it's saying, recommend that the city council hold a new first reading on the applicant's latest proposal.
Correct.
Okay, now that sounds very similar to what Mr. Lasso said, so unless I
Is, I just wanted to clarify that-
misunderstood it.
The only thing I want to clarify is that an action is the request from staff.
All right, I think he was asking the same thing, actually. So that's the way I understood it, take an action to send it back to city council.
Yes.
Can I ask, I guess I'm not really sure why we want a new first reading.
Sure, and that's what's laid out in the rest of the staff report if you'd
Yeah,
like.
I've been looking at it, and I would just,
All right, yeah, let's hear it.
Sure.
And we'll, if you still got your question, let's ask away.
Sure. So just walking through the lines of the staff report, lines 5 through 9 are what we just walked through, the request. Lines 11 through 18 are the outline of the rationale that staff is using to arrive at its recommendation. The 4 points in the rationale are that, 1, the amended application is consistent with the city's adopted urban design goals.
that I get. What I don't get is why we want a new first reading. That doesn't actually explain that. Just,
Sure.
if you want to read it, that's fine, but I can read it too, but it's just.
The reason for a new first reading procedurally is that the first reading included a rezoning pattern that is not what's in the amended application, and so a new first reading is needed procedurally.
Why do we have to do an action to do that? Couldn't they just pull their application and just ask for a new first reading?
They could. This was seen because at the end of the day, because there are 4 sitting council members that have not recused themselves, the Planning Commission's vote on a recommendation for a rezoning is critical to the application's success. So the idea is by the Planning Commission taking an action tonight, you're signaling a willingness to work with this amended application.
Okay. So there really is no reason for us to do this other than they're looking for a show of support.
I think they're looking for, should they keep going with this application or not? That if
Show
you
of
can't get through the
support would
Planning
be
Commission tonight,
clear.
are you going to be able to get through it again in 3 months?
Well, and I believe also, Mr. Chairman, the staff feels that there is good progress, and this could result in a better land use and zoning pattern that would be supportive of the small area plan, stabilize Maple Avenue, and provide a proper transition between the higher density zoning to the other side of Maple Avenue, where we have zoning. So it's, as a result of this somewhat lengthy but iterative process, we believe a better land use and zoning pattern. Achieve the objectives of stabilizing this area and preserving historic houses in this area.
All right, well, yes.
By going back to first reading, does that mean that it comes back to us again?
Yes.
Okay.
That also means that if there are, if you are, so right, the substance of the recommendation is what's laid out in the staff report. The procedure is what we've been talking about so far tonight. But in terms of the substance of the application, staff feels that the proposed amendments that the applicants have made are supportive of the city's policies and goals. If there are items that Planning Commission wants to see amended, there are opportunities to correct those. If you want to make those recommendations tonight, that can be done. That might be the fastest way. There will also be another opportunity if you want to make
Right.
those later.
And by doing this, sending it back for first reading, it would accelerate or keep the process going.
That's my understanding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So let's briefly hear how it's changed, let's then quickly poll the commission to see if this is worth our recommendation that goes back to first reading, and then proceed accordingly. And then at that point, we can give them our additional comments, unless you have something that is, pressing that comes forward right away. But in the effort of time, I'd like to probably do it the next stage.
Sure. Things that have changed, I'll go ahead and jump to the section beginning on line 82 in the staff report. Line 87 talks about zoning at the block level. This was thought from the Planning Commission at the last meeting, taking a block level view to the planning exercise and making sure that it makes smooth transitions to the districts around it. That's been achieved. This now proposes an R1B frontage along all those residential properties on that side of North Maple Avenue. The transition to T1 aligns with the rezoning that was made in 2006 for the Foxcraft property, which fronts onto Great Falls Street. Next, normalized lot lines to the extent possible under the HCC, the Historical, Cultural, and Conservation Overlay. The lot line for Lot 308, I believe it is, was normalized. Additionally, Lot 312, which is adjacent to the playground, has a historic structure on it, is currently non-conforming in terms of size. That lot was expanded to make it conforming. Historic preservation, line 107, there was language added to the application materials explaining how the proffered conditions as well as the CDP go beyond what's required in the HCC. The specific points of that are described in line 161 through 170. One thing that's improved beyond the HCC is the maintenance standards, that instead of simply preventing damage to the structure, the proffered conditions go to cosmetic changes, maintenance of landscape, maintenance of the materials on the exterior of the house. It also goes toward the footprints of the buildings, that without the CDP, the buildings could be extended up to 30% of their lot coverage. The houses now are restricted to their current footprints because that's what's shown in the conceptual development plan. Continuation of church uses on line 111, that was added as a proffer condition to make it clear that these things will remain as accessory to the church. And then 115, talking about the city's desires for better community energy planning. Commitment was made to meet Energy Star standards. And then precedent, this was a question that the Planning Commission raised. The applicants looked into it, city staff looked into it. There was just one other example in the city in terms of land use patterns, where you've got single-family houses in an R1A district that are surrounded by higher density and higher intensity uses. And that was in the South Washington Street South Washington Street area. I believe it's along Douglas Avenue. The thing that makes this situation even unique from that one is that the North Washington Street plan provides specific design guidance for North Maple Avenue. And so here you've got that combination of land use patterns and small area plan and guidance directing this design for this street. And so that's how we walk then into that rationale of the staff recommendation: meeting the urban design goals, advancing city's historic preservation goals, taking a block level view of planning, exercising solid planning principles, and then funding public investments that otherwise could not be achieved in the near term.
(10-4), got it. Anybody have any strong feelings either way about pushing this back to council to start another first reading?
I think if they want a first reading, they should go resubmit and go back to council for a first reading. I don't think it's necessary for us to take action for that.
Okay. Anyone else?
I want to clarify, I don't think I mind kicking it back for first reading, but are we also, I mean, there's a lot of whereases, are we also suggesting that we're already cool with this rezoning thing? Because I still have a lot of questions about that. If we're saying, hey, we're cool with this rezoning, changing the future land use map, and that's why we want to send it back to first reading, then I probably have questions. before I
That's
vote.
why I asked if it, coming back
But
to
if I
us.
can ask those questions later, then I don't.
Well, I think it's pretty clear from the motion
Yeah, the motion seems
that-
really long. It's just the
that,
last little part that
like they
says-
said, we would be sending it back to, we would be encouraging council to move forward with it because we're, it's just,
To give it a first reading, another first reading.
Right.
Changes.
but it's suggesting, I guess if we did this motion and we approved it, then we would be suggesting that we agree with all the whereases and that we agree that it's all right to switch this to R1B and all those things that are in here. Like, that we're for it, because it provides flexibility. I mean, I'm not in, as the current motion is written, I would be unable to vote for that.
I was wondering how you felt about that.
I'll comment that, I will say that I will give the app, I know I made a lot of comments related to how this was organized and proposed, and I do see positive changes in the application compared to when I last saw it earlier in the year. I think I know I personally did make comments again regarding looking at this more holistically at the block level, and I see a response to that from the applicant and from staff. So as far as that goes, I'm appreciative of that, and in my opinion, it is an improvement. I reviewed this a few days ago. I had more intelligent things to say, but given the late hour, I'm fading fast. All I'll say is that I do see it as an improvement, and I see it as the comments that were made were taken seriously and incorporated, even including the lot line issue and trying to create more regular lots as opposed to lots. I think I used the word contrived or convoluted. I forget which one last time, and I think it's less. It looks less contrived based on what's shown now. So that is a positive change, and I'll put that on the record. I do see this as being an improved application.
Anyone else?
I think I echo that same sentiment that there have been a number of changes that, apart from the technicalities of the zoning, which I certainly need to think about some more, but on the face of it, the improvements, I believe, will result in a better block. The end result of all of the changes is that particular block will perform better for the city than it does currently. So from that standpoint, I'm okay with moving ahead to a first reading. I did have one technical question on the Energy Star, and that has to do with whether or not the applicant intends to get certification. We don't have to resolve that tonight, but I'll just lay the question out. Certification, okay, that's super. And I appreciate the comments that were in the letter. Mr. Jackson letter done a nice job on that. I think I appreciate that. So.
All right, in general, I think that I will also sort of echo Mr. Krasner's comments. I think that this is a improved application. The language here in the whereases does not seem overly controversial to me. I think it has met enough of the requirements to move this forward. The lot lines don't look as contrived. There's some protections on the historic side, looking at a more holistic level, all those things. I don't seem to have, doesn't mean I don't have questions, doesn't mean I need to understand it better, but to move it to the next step, I don't feel like these are that restrictive, these whereases. So I'm willing to support a motion to recommend it to council, but some of that has to do with the hour of the evening, so. It's not that I don't care, it's that, staff has reviewed it, they have made their recommendation, I've read these whereases, and I think they are benign enough to say, let's keep the application moving, and that it is, there's nothing there that I have issue with. I do want to understand more about how it will actually work, but I don't think that the time is at 11:40 at night. So I would support a motion to that end. I'm not sure it's going to get unanimous support, but
I would just say my concern here is that they can go to first reading without this motion. They can go to a new first reading without this motion. And so what I felt was, even while you're right, most of the statements here are pretty benign, I'm afraid that if we do a motion and we push this forward to go back to first reading, which they can do already, that it's going to be used to say that we suggest that we, the Planning Commission, support everything that's going to be done here. That we support historic houses having their lot include parking when it's supposed to be a full R1A lot, that we support that historic houses lose their R1A lot and become R1B, that we support spot zoning, that we support that in the future in other R1A districts, we could decide, because they're near an area plan, that they can be rezoned as a block. I just say this as someone, I'm in an R1A district, very close to small area plan. I would hate to think that because of that, I could suddenly have my neighborhood rezoned to R1B. I think there's a lot, so I'm just, like you said, it's not controversial, but I think it would be used to show that we support this going forward at this point. And I don't think we do, because we still have questions.
Can't we put that into the motion?
I think
that we-
if you were going to do the motion, I would perhaps,
Recommend that it goes forward, but we will take, when it returns to us, that we will,
I guess you could add that the fact that we recommend that it goes back to first reading does not
Does
mean that
not
we
mean
wholly
consent.
support this action.
yeah, right, or something like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can do that.
And there is a whereas clause that speaks to the precedent issue, that you just mentioned, that, again, talks about the very somewhat atypical and unique, situation on this block, as opposed to, other areas of R1A. But, I mean, again, I don't think we all have to agree on the project, but, I think, I agree with the chair that I think that overall the whereas clauses are, we can, if we want to really, get into it, maybe, but, and equivocate, we could, but I think overall, as the chair said, they're not locking this body in to any final decision. It's simply showing that, acknowledging the positive changes they made, and leaving it at that. It's in my view. So I'm going to support the motion.
Well, I will just say that I understand the limited precedence for lots with historic structures, but it doesn't limit the precedence of R1A lots being changed to R1B that are near churches and/or near a commercial district. So that would be part of my issue too. But the historic houses, that's another issue.
Here's what I would say, is throughout this entire process, you've continued to make really good points on this and bring up issues that are important for us to address. You have been consistently outspoken on these issues on this application. And I think there's still things that we need to consider. I still think the spot zoning is an issue. I still think the switching from R1A to R1B is something we need to discuss further. I think where I stand here is that the applicant has continued to move this forward, and that I think that I'm comfortable continuing to let them move it forward and give us an opportunity to address these questions and really relevant points that you continually make as we go forward. But at this point, I think there's been enough movement that I'm willing to support what it says here to get it to first reading. I think more conversation needs to happen, and I just don't want it to happen this evening because of, I'm tired. That's really where I'm
So, I'm mostly on board with that, but can I just get one clarification made from Paul? So
Get as many clarifications as you need.
the last part of the proposed motion, the I further move, that talks specifically about, I assume, what I have as 1E, the staff's recommended future. Is this us saying this is what we want, or is this us saying, hey, bring this back to us and we'll vote on this? Because this I want to talk about before I say, yes, this is what I
Right.
want. If I'm just saying, bring this to us later and we'll talk about it, then I'm happy to vote for that tonight. If I'm saying this is a done deal, then I probably would vote for everything except for that last little part.
Yeah, and isn't this procedural to get it going? Go
That's the-
back and start the process again?
I'm talking about the change in the future land use map, not there.
That has to be, you have to move it forward, it has to be advertised, there needs to be a public
Right.
hearing.
Then I'm
Nothing can happen until that happens.
So I could vote for
You
this
can't
and then
even
later
legally
vote against
on
this
that
future
until
land use
that
map.
happens.
And then
So
also, at a future date,
continue
we
to
could
move it
make
forward so a
more.
public hearing can be
Hold
held.
on, one at a time, one at a time. Mr.
sorry.
Schneider, go ahead. Continue, please.
It's, nothing happens until it's advertised. It can't be advertised until it's moved forward. It doesn't obligate you to vote for it. It's simply saying, move it forward so we can get to a public hearing so it can be considered. It's not obligating you.
Oh, I was going to say, because
Do
what
this,
I
you're-
read was that.
And
you're-
only if the council authorizes it will it even come back to you.
Right, but what I read is that what you said, it authorized the city staff to bring forward an amendment. It doesn't say that we're voting for said amendment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and nothing can be voted on until it's properly advertised as a public hearing
Right.
in the paper per state law.
So I think
and
they would
city.
just be bringing it to us later.
Right, that's the way I see it, and also the fact that when it does come back to us, that if there are concerns for any precedents going forward, we can address those and have them in the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion. Someone volunteer to make one.
I'll make the motion.
Hey, hold on, we need a second.
I don't have to read it first, or no?
Okay,
Do I
okay.
have to read the whole thing into the record? I do, right? All right, so I will move that, let's see. Whereas Section 58-85 of the city charter requires that the planning commission make a recommendation to council on any proposal to the, proposed, I think I should say, zoning map amendment. And whereas the city's comprehensive plan and North Washington Street small area plan call for developing the 300 block of North Maple Avenue as a residential street bounded by historic properties. And whereas the applicant's proposal is heard at council first reading of ordinance T017-01, included several beneficial components to the public realm, but included several components that needed modification to be consistent with policy guidance. And whereas the applicants have updated their proposal in response to feedback from the City Council, Planning Commission, Historical Commissions, Historic Architecture Review Board, the public at large, and city staff, and whereas the applicant's updated proposal supports and advances the goals specified in the city's comprehensive plan and North Washington Street small area plan, including density, use, character, and design, and whereas the proposed zoning map amendment supports the harmonious development of the city in a manner that is consistent with and supports the implementation of the city's adopted comprehensive plan and associated guiding documents. Whereas the proposed zoning map amendment is limited precedent for other lots with historic structures because unlike other historic structures, these are surrounded by higher intensity and higher density land uses, and the city's adopted North Washington Street small area plan provides specific guidance for development of North Maple Avenue. Now, therefore, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council hold a new first reading on the applicant's latest proposal. I further move that the Planning Commission direct city staff to bring forward an amendment to the city's future land use map that is consistent with the adopted North Washington Street small area plan and provides flexibility to accommodate the latest proposal
I'll second it.
from the applicants.
All right, we have a second, but before we vote, I realize I've been remiss in my haste to not open this up to public comment. So if there's someone who wants to speak on this issue prior to us taking a vote, please let me know. All right, I'm going to close public comment. As the motion stands, we have a proposal and a second, so I think we're ready to take a vote on it.
It's at 48. Okay. I think I said it. Oh.
Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call vote on this.
Ms. Hockenberry?
Yes.
Mr. Krasner?
Yes.
Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Teets?
No,
Bodiska?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, there's no other business. We need to approve the May 15th 2017 minutes. And anybody got any issues with these minutes? If you can find it in your enormous packet.
I looked at,
I don't have any.
If I did, I forgot.
The right side of the die says no comments.
Move to approve the minutes as prepared.
Second.
I believe that was Ms. Teets.
I won.
I
Yep,
move
thank
to
you.
adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any abstentions? I don't think so. Excellent.
Can we
Okay.
move to adjourn?
I am going to bypass the commission reports.
Since I said, can I have 2 comments before we adjourn?
You may.
One, my neighbor says that this meeting was advertised online at 7:30 PM. I don't look online because I just show up, but we've got to do better. If the meeting's not going to start till 11 o'clock, we can't have our friends and neighbors showing up at 7:30. So I don't know who controls that, but that's one thing. The other thing, I was wondering, this is related to our work session downstairs. This is the public comment about that Broad Washington. And on the back, I don't know if this is here on purpose, but this is the Falls Church News Press poll. I would say that we should never include this because next poll, just let me know how you want it to go. I'll make it go that way. It's not valid remotely. So I would hate to see this as a public record.
Yeah,
This
that's
thing
true.
means nothing. That's all I got.
Okay. Mr. Schneider, can we push the director's report if that's acceptable?
We sure can. We're going to meet Saturday. The
That's true.
school plan, you saw the preview of that
Sure
this
did.
evening, and we're going to have a piece of that at the very end to just provide a brief update, the small area plan, which will be largely what you had in work session earlier. So those you can be there, great, but you.
I was going to say, do we have a
lot of
head
it.
count? Is anybody going to be able to attend? I've said many times I cannot.
I'm out of town.
I don't know, I'm supposed to be working for the festival, but,
It's at 9 a.m., so are we?
well, I do the market PR.
Whatever.
I'm hoping to be there, but my kids.
It'd be great if we had like one representative.
So it's screwed.
Yeah,
but,
well, I'll try. I'm going to see if I can get somebody to cover for me.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. I just have a family commitment I cannot miss. All right. Then, no planning commission reports. You can save until next week. All right.
Tinner Hill.
Tinner Hill. All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.